Here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only.
You got that right.
It's shameful. We are after the truth in this courtroom. Let the community feel through your verdict that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision. But also present at the waterfall that night, Brian Higgins. Recall that ominous text that he sent to Karen with her and John standing just feet away. Well?
It's closing time and Alan Jackson's delivering his last plea to the jury before they decide Karen Reed's fate.
That's what Brian Higgins was confronted with following his well text. What of all things starts going through Brian Higgins' mind? What is he thinking about after seeing this, after witnessing this? He shows you.
The defense started out attacking old Higgy Bear, and they just showed his reaction after he saw Karen and John kiss after he sent the text to her.
Sparring, practicing, fighting techniques.
Is not how I would describe those two lovers humping.
This next video is after he sees John kiss Karen on the forehead, after he sends that aggressive text to Karen. Higgins is very clearly upset. He's agitated. Chris Albert tries to control him, tries to talk to him, calm him down perhaps.
This was a funny part of the opening because Alan was describing what we were going to see, but the picture left on the screen was Brian Albert humping Brian Higgins.
Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. You'll see that in the video that you're about to watch. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only.
You got that right.
John O'Keefe.
How the hell did we all miss this in the first trial?
A few minutes later, Higgins then texts John directly. You coming here?
Is there a chance Higgy Bear is gay? First we see him humping Brian Albert at the bar, then he's late night sexting John O'Keefe wanting him to come over.
3 question marks. It's now 12:20 a.m.
And we arrive at 34 Fairview. It didn't look like there was any soiree going on. It didn't look inviting. The outside was dark, and I didn't see any familiar looking vehicles. And I said, John, can you make sure we're welcome? He said, I'll run in. So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder. And he walked up the driveway, and John always kind of skipped and walked at the same time. He was always in a rush. And I saw him reach the breezeway door, which is the side front door.
Karen also admitted at this time that she had the music blasting, the heat was blowing, it started to snow. Could John have entered the door that led to the garage? That's my new theory now.
And he opened the door and went to walk in. I waited probably a minute, and he doesn't come.
My wife never has that problem.
And it only took like 2 or 3 minutes for me to be irritated. So I called him. I didn't want to wait for him to respond to a text. And he didn't answer. I said, you've got to be kidding me. What are you doing? You just went in and I'm sitting here. Either we're welcome or we're not, but it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to determine that. And then about 10 minutes went by, I left. And I was not happy.
So why was Higgins coaxing John over to 34 Fairview? You coming here? And why not text Karen? Because at that moment, he wasn't interested in Karen. He was interested in John O'Keefe.
Higgins is either really gay or the killer.
This is about 5 minutes before John gets out of the SUV and walks toward the house. About 5 minutes before Karen sees him alive for the last time. So what happened inside that house, or that basement, or that garage?
Did John O'Keefe go to the wrong door, the one that leads into the garage, and did Brian Higgins meet him there?
Laceration over John's right eyelid, black eyes, a large dog at the home, an obvious dog bite on John O'Keefe's right arm, a head injury from falling backward onto a hard surface, alleged surface, When John didn't come back outside, Karen, very oblivious to what had happened, thinking she was just left alone in the car out in the cold in the middle of the night, she got frustrated and she drove home. Her phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. When he didn't come home at about 5 a.m., Karen went looking for him in a panic. As you know, her worst fears were realized when she found John in Brian Albert's front lawn. The screams for help by Karen, the yelling and the hollering, ambulances, emergency lights, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol officers, all of them swarming all over the lawn just under Brian Albert's bedroom window. And of course, as you learned during the course of this trial, Brian Albert never came out of the house.
Those of you not familiar with the white suburbs may not know, but whenever there's a fire truck or even just one little ambulance, everyone in the white suburbs comes out and they follow that truck around and they all come out and they watch it. It's just something they do.
That the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, for his part, never went into the house. They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle. Their investigation was flawed from the start because their investigator was corrupted from the start. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision. Not a single medical expert called by the defense or called by the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car. Not one. Think about the irony. Not one. Dr. Dan Wolf did the testing on the taillight. Actual testing, not some ridiculous blue paint kindergarten project. Folks, understand something. If any part of that diffuser portion of the taillight is broken, there is no light.
This is a critical part of the case that someone in our community found out. Apparently in a taillight is a diffuser. If the diffuser is out, it won't emit any light.
It doesn't illuminate at all. It's just black. What do you notice about the right taillight?
After Karen's SUV was brought to the police station and after Michael Proctor had access to it, the diffuser was completely gone. With that diffuser broken, no light can be emitted from this right tailgate. But as we see at 5:07 a.m. before Proctor gets his hands on it, it's clearly emitting light.
Completely illuminated. How can that be if the Commonwealth claims that those diffusers, the portion that lights up the light, were already scattered all over 34 Fairview? That's their theory. The taillight's completely lit up. That would be impossible. John's arm would be basically destroyed, fractured, broken, and shattered. If they claim the car was going fast enough to shatter the taillight and shatter the diffusers, then it was also going fast enough to destroy and shatter John's arm, and it simply did not. The Commonwealth's theory is that the sleeve of John's hoodie sweatshirt was damaged by flying shards of taillight slicing through the shirt and through John's arm. John's arm had about 36 abrasions. How did 36 shards of acrylic go through 9 tiny little puncture holes?
That's a great question that was not proven, but you know who we should ask? Trooper Paul.
What's your theory?
It just did.
How'd that happen?
It just did.
And that solves it.
Somebody needs to answer that. Why are there no slices or cuts in the hoodie? Why is there no blood, no skin, no tissue on a single shard of taillight? Dr. La Posada told you that the patterned injury on the back of John's head could only be produced by hitting a hard, ridged, or ledged surface, like a concrete stair or step.
Oftentimes when someone is killed by one punch, it's not from the punch, it's from the head hitting the back of something really hard like the concrete.
What's just through that garage door? Michael Proctor never stepped down in that garage to find out.
The evidence is really pointing now to Higgy Bear confronting John in the garage. If that's true, John technically never came in the house, which was that common theme amongst everyone that was actually at that house.
And scratches. 8 weeks and counting, not one witness who actually disputes that John O'Keefe's arm injuries are from a dog. There is no evidence that John was hit by a car. She's a whack job cunt, no ass bitch. She's got a leaky balloon knot. She's fucked. And up to this point, Michael Proctor had done zero investigation. Late night, sitting at his office, rifling through Karen's phone.
He's now reading the text messages sent to and from Michael Proctor, the lead investigator on this case.
Bragging about looking for naked pictures of her. That text wasn't sent to his buddies or his friends. That text was sent to his supervisors at the Massachusetts State Police, for God's sake. And what was their response? Sergeant Buchanan liked this conduct with a big old thumbs up. He was fired for this blatant bias. If the Massachusetts State Police can't trust him, how can you trust him with this investigation? The Commonwealth did not present their own lead investigator to the jury, the very jury who is charged with judging the investigation. What about the Ford Edge and that snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? He observed that Ford Edge parked outside Brian Albert's house at 3:30 a.m. That vehicle was moved directly in front of where John's body was found sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. The only person connected to a car of that make and model, Brian Albert, parked in a spot specifically to block the line of sight in the exact position where John's body would be later found by Karen Reed.
And always remember that Brian Albert and Higgy Bear were communicating at 2:22 a.m.
And what about Brian Albert's dog, Chloe? A dog with a history. A dog that is, quote, not good with strangers. Dr. Russell confirmed that John's patterned injuries were from a dog, just like the dog Brian Albert owned. And then Chloe just disappeared. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house. Think about that exact quote. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house.
If our hypothesis that John went into the wrong door and went into the garage and then was confronted by Higgy Bear is true, then technically they're not lying.
And Brian Albert, the patriarch of the family. Exactly. And by the way, if someone does tell you Google hypothermia, why would you Google how long it takes to die in cold?
He's referring to the Google search that was made by Jen McCabe, who was at that house.
Wouldn't you just Google hypothermia? Higgins had been sending flirtatious and romantic texts to John's girlfriend, Karen Reed. You'll remember I asked Sergeant Buchanan a simple question. Were those texts flirtatious in nature? He refused to answer that simple question. Do you remember that? The reason he refused to answer that simple question is telling. It's because these flirtatious texts establish a motive for Brian Higgins. It's what was so important that Higgins needed to go to the police station at that time, 1:30 in the morning, while drunk, by the way.
Alan believes that he went there to monitor the calls. I believe he offered that information to set a timeline that we could confirm.
He would know that the CPD would be the first to get the call when someone reported John missing or injured. You saw the skulking through the hallways with his hood up.
That's a great point by Alan. Remember, we saw Higgy Bear walking through the halls with his hood up. White people always pull their hood down when they walk inside, unless they're up to no good.
Chief of Police Kenny Berkowitz, also good friends, were in the Sallyport together with the SUV for a, quote, wildly long time. Higgins was given unfettered access to that SUV and its taillight nearly immediately.
Later that day, that bratty cop witnessed Higgy Bear and the chief of police in the Sallyport with that actual car, and then claimed it was a false memory.
And it was at that exact time, the exact moments that Higgins would be in that Sallyport, that the 42 minutes of the Sallyport video is just missing. Well, that's convenient. That's how it got cracked. And Judson Welcher's own recreation confirms it, that there were no taillight pieces found in any of the initial searches conducted at the scene.
That's a critical point. As much as we make fun of the dopey cops in Canton using a leaf blower to clear the scene of the crime, it did one important thing. It removed most of the snow, and there was no taillight.
2 searches, 50-foot area searched. Not a single fragment was found until after Michael Proctor had access to and control of that SUV and its taillight. Watch closely as Dr. Welcher stands as a surrogate.
He totally moved into the car.
Is that a righteous test? Or is that a manipulation? Dr. Welcher also told you under oath that there were no x-rays taken of John's arm. He tried to deceive you into believing that John's arm might have been broken. I don't know. I didn't see any x-rays, so I can't tell you what the damage was inside the arm. Really?
X-ray of the body of Mr. O'Keefe, and we see here the 2 bones of the arm.
I haven't seen any evidence of an x-ray of the arms.
There's no injury to them.
I didn't see any evidence that they actually x-rayed.
We see the pelvis bone. There's no injury to that. They're perfectly normal, and there's no abnormal soft tissue swelling.
I haven't seen any evidence of an x-ray of the arms.
It's a normal right arm.
The Commonwealth has had those x-rays in their possession for 3 years. Stood here in front of you and dramatically held up John's sweatshirt. Asked Dr. Wolf about the multiple holes in the back of the sweatshirt. And he said, how about here? Here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. The truth is, the Commonwealth created those holes. They aren't holes from road rash. They weren't made on January 29th. Those are cuttings from the Commonwealth's own crime lab, folks. That's what those holes are.
During the trial, the prosecutor held up John's sweatshirt and pointed to the holes in the back of it.
And even with 3 prosecutors, all 3 of them, sitting right there in the room at the time, it had to be the defense to correct that record. If we hadn't done that, what impression would you folks have been left with? That's more than negligence. That's dangerous.
The implications were that the expert missed the obvious holes in the back of the sweatshirt, but it turns out they were made by the state when they were doing testing on the shirt.
It's shameful. We are after the truth in this courtroom. They haven't even shown you that it's possible that he was hit by a car. And the reason they haven't is because it's not possible that he was hit by a car. Your job is not to do their job. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Reed.
I wish Alan would stop reading. He has a beautiful voice and a beautiful presence, but when you're speaking in public, never read. That especially goes for attorneys. You lose many things, including that valuable eye contact.
Not just because you can, because you must. The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. Let the community feel through your verdict that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Reed not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
An emotional ending to a long war. There are no more higher stakes than criminal trials with someone's life on the line. And now it's up to the jury to make their final decision.